In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the busy planets filled with cities and machines, a small spacecraft drifted through space. Inside it was a little girl only 8 years old, her hands clutching a small stuffed toy that had survived the crash with her. The ship had been damaged beyond repair and she had no idea where she was. She didn't know how she had ended up in space, only that one moment she had been with her parents on a research trip, and the next, there was a bright light, a noise that hurt her ears, and then silence. When she woke up, she was alone. Her name wasn't known to the strange beings who found her. They were tall, pale-skinned creatures with bright silver eyes and long fingers that looked both delicate and powerful. Their ship was enormous, filled with cold metallic halls that hummed softly. They weren't cruel by nature, but they were not kind either. They studied living beings from across the galaxy, and the small human girl was now one of their specimens. To them, humans were curious creatures, weak, emotional, and unpredictable. The leader of the aliens was fascinated by how humans survived despite their fragility. But another group among them disagreed. They thought humans were too dangerous, too emotional, and too easily corrupted by fear and love. They believed the child should not live among them. The debate grew, and eventually the crueler side won. They decided to test the girl's worth, not with questions or machines, but by feeding her to one of their deadliest creatures. The creature was called an albino wolf of Raxus. It was not like the wolves of Earth. It was bigger, stronger, with glowing white fur and eyes like burning ice. It had been bred for hunting and trained to destroy anything that moved. No being had ever survived once thrown into its enclosure. The aliens had always used it to dispose of failed experiments or dangerous animals. Now they planned to throw the little girl in and watch what happened. The chamber was cold when the girl was brought in. Her small body shook, not from the temperature, but from fear. She didn't understand their language, but she understood their expressions. She knew she was in danger. Her heart pounded as the door to the beast's cage opened, and the ground beneath her feet vibrated with the heavy steps of the albino wolf. Its breath filled the air like mist. It was huge, its fur shining under the alien lights, its teeth sharp like blades. The aliens stood behind the glass wall, watching with quiet fascination. The wolf lowered its head and growled, its body tensing to strike. The girl backed away, pressing herself against the wall, her small hands trembling. She whispered something softly. It was the only thing she could do. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry. It was a small sound like a prayer or a song her mother used to sing. The aliens tilted their heads, curious. The wolf froze for a moment, confused. It stared at her, its growl fading. Something strange happened next. The girl didn't run. Instead, she slowly extended her hand. Her big eyes filled with tears met the wolf's cold gaze. And for reasons no one could explain, the creature stepped closer, not to attack, but to sniff her hand. The aliens exchanged puzzled looks. The leader raised a hand, signaling the guards not to interfere. The wolf's breath was hot, its nose inches from her skin. Then instead of biting, it sat down. Its glowing eyes softened. It made a low, rumbling sound, almost gentle, and lowered its massive head beside her feet. The girl blinked in disbelief. She hesitated for a long moment, then slowly placed her tiny hand on the creature's fur. The wolf did not move. It let her touch it. The aliens were silent. No one had ever seen the albino wolf act this way. It was a beast born for violence, but here it was, calm and quiet before a fragile child. The leader leaned closer to the glass, whispering something in astonishment. Minutes passed. The girl began to speak softly, her words meaning nothing to the aliens but carrying a strange rhythm. The wolf listened. Its tail moved slightly, brushing against her feet like a protective gesture. One of the scientists recorded everything, their instruments flashing with strange readings. The energy around the child was unlike anything they had ever detected. Her heartbeats, her voice, even her presence. It all created a vibration that the sensors couldn't explain. It was as if she carried a power that connected her with living creatures on a level far beyond science. The aliens began to realize something they couldn't understand, that this human child was not ordinary. Perhaps she carried something within her, a gift or a force that resonated with life itself. The leader ordered the test to stop immediately. The guards opened the chamber doors, but the wolf growled at them, standing protectively over the girl. Even the aliens, advanced and fearless, hesitated to move closer. They had wanted to destroy her, but now it seemed she had tamed their deadliest beast without a single word of command. The girl eventually fell asleep beside the creature, her head resting on its soft fur. The aliens continued to watch in silence, their cold logic replaced by wonder. The leader of the ship felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in centuries. Compassion. It was as if this small human had awakened something ancient and forgotten within them. They had studied thousands of species, conquered dozens of worlds, but never had they witnessed such a moment of purity between predator and prey. When she woke up, the wolf was still beside her. It let her climb onto its back as if it had accepted her as part of its pack. The aliens could no longer deny it. The child was special. She wasn't just a weak human. She was a living symbol of something they had long lost: empathy, connection, and innocence. From that day forward, everything aboard that ship changed. The leader commanded that the girl be protected and studied gently, not as a specimen, but as a guest. The albino wolf was never caged again. It followed her everywhere like a silent guardian. Some of the aliens even began to feel emotions they didn't understand when they saw her smile. They wondered if humanity's greatest strength was not power, but heart, something they had forgotten in their search for control. What began as an act of cruelty turned into a revelation. The aliens, who had seen themselves as gods among life forms, now looked at an 8-year-old child and realized how small they truly were. They had fed her to their deadliest beast, only to learn that she carried the one thing even they couldn't create: the ability to touch another soul without fear. After the storm passed, peace returned to the alien ship, but nothing felt the same anymore. The little human girl who once sat alone and scared in a metal cage had now become the heart of the entire vessel. Wherever she went, the aliens watched her in quiet amazement. She didn't speak their language, yet somehow, everyone seemed to understand her feelings. Her gentle gestures, her laughter, and even the way she looked at things carried a kind of warmth that none of them had ever known before. The albino wolf never left her side. Its white fur shimmered under the ship's soft blue lights, and its glowing eyes followed every movement around her. It had become her protector, but more than that, it was her companion, the only one who truly understood her loneliness. The aliens had once called the creature a weapon, but now they saw it as something else entirely. It was calm, peaceful, and even affectionate. All because of her, days turned into weeks. The girl began to explore different parts of the ship. The aliens didn't stop her anymore. They even opened doors for her and showed her new things, like glowing gardens that grew inside glass domes, and long corridors filled with shining stars projected on the walls. Every time she discovered something new, her face would light up with wonder, and her joy seemed to spread to everyone around. The cold, emotionless ship was slowly becoming a home full of life. The leader of the aliens watched all this quietly. His people had lived for thousands of years, traveling from one planet to another, collecting knowledge and power. Yet none of them had ever changed the ship's energy the way this little human did. He often stood near the observation deck, looking at her from afar, wondering what made her so special. Was it her emotions? Her heart? Or was there something deeper? Something that connected her to the very essence of life itself? One day he decided to test something. He called his science team and ordered them to measure the life energy of the girl again. The readings shocked them. Her energy was growing stronger every day, and whenever she was near the wolf, the energy multiplied. It was as if their bond created a force that balanced everything around them. Machines that had been broken for years started working again. The plants in the oxygen gardens grew faster. Even the stars visible from the ship's window seemed to shine brighter. When she passed by, the leader began to realize a truth that frightened him. This little girl might hold the power to restore life wherever she went, but he also knew that such a power could easily be misused if the wrong hands tried to control it. He called a private meeting with his closest council members. Some of them wanted to take her to their home planet and study her more deeply. Others warned against it, saying that interfering with her natural energy might destroy the balance she had created. The leader stayed silent, his mind filled with uncertainty. Meanwhile, the girl continued to grow closer to the wolf. Every night they would sit near the large viewing window staring at the stars. She would hum softly, and the wolf would rest its head on her lap. Even though she didn't understand where she was, she had stopped feeling afraid. There was something in her that told her she was meant to be there, that maybe there was a reason she had survived when no one else did. One day, While walking through the ship's garden, she noticed something strange. One of the plants, which had been wilted and gray, started glowing when she touched it. The petals turned bright blue and a sweet fragrance filled the air. The aliens who saw it were stunned. They took samples and analyzed them, but couldn't explain the transformation. The plant was not only alive again, it was evolving. It had changed into a new form of life altogether. The leader saw it with his own eyes and finally understood. The girl wasn't just healing things. She was transforming them. He approached her slowly, careful not to frighten her. She looked up at him, holding the glowing flower in her small hands. He smiled for the first time in many years. A real smile, not the cold expression he usually wore. The translator device spoke for him, saying softly, "You have done something no one in this galaxy could ever do." She didn't understand the words, but she saw the kindness in his eyes. She held out the flower toward him. The light from it reflected on both their faces, and for a moment, there was no difference between human and alien, only life sharing one small miracle. From that day on, the leader treated her as an honored guest. He ordered that she be given a special room near the command center, with a wide glass wall that showed the stars. The wolf had its own space beside her bed, though it rarely left her side. The crew members began to treat her with respect, even admiration. Some of them even started learning to mimic human gestures like smiling or waving. It was strange to see creatures who once felt no emotion now trying to express warmth. But far away, in another part of the galaxy, others had begun to notice the changes in the alien ship's energy. There were ancient machines scattered across space, designed to detect unusual life forces. They picked up the readings from the little girl, powerful waves of pure energy unlike anything recorded before. One of the nearby alien empires saw it as a threat. They believed that whoever held such a life source could control worlds. One night, as the girl slept peacefully beside her wolf, alarms suddenly echoed through the ship again. The red lights flashed. The leader rushed to the command room, his expression dark. Enemy ships were approaching, large, powerful, and armed for battle. They had come to capture the source of energy, unaware that it was a human child. The leader's people prepared to defend themselves, but they were badly outnumbered. The girl woke up from the noise and looked around in confusion. The wolf growled, sensing danger. Outside her window, she could see bright flashes in the distance, explosions of light in the stars. She didn't know what was happening, but she could feel fear spreading through the ship like cold wind. She stood up, holding the glowing crystal close to her heart, the same one the leader had given her before. It began to glow brighter, as if it understood the danger too. The leader rushed to her room. The moment he entered, the wolf stood between them, ready to protect her. But the leader spoke softly. "We are in danger." "They are coming for you." The translator repeated his words in her language. She didn't know what to do, but when she saw the fear even in his eyes, she understood the situation was serious. The ship shook violently as enemy fire hit the outer shields. The aliens fought back bravely, but their defense systems were failing. The leader turned to the girl and said something that wasn't translated, his voice filled with desperation and respect. Then something extraordinary happened again. The girl looked at the wolf, and they seemed to understand each other without words. She walked to the window, pressed her hand against the cold glass, and closed her eyes. The glow around her body grew stronger. The crystal floated slightly above her palm, pulsing with light. Outside, the attacking ship suddenly froze in place as if held by an invisible force. The energy spread across space like waves of golden light. The enemy ship's weapons stopped working. Their system shut down, and then, slowly, the ships drifted away, not destroyed, but peacefully pushed aside by a gentle force that felt more like kindness than power. Everyone in the command room stood speechless. The leader could only stare as the readings showed impossible results. The little girl, standing there in her soft white glow, had saved them all again, not by fighting, but by calming the very energy of space itself. When she opened her eyes, tears ran down her cheeks. She didn't fully understand what she had done. She only knew she didn't want anyone to be hurt. The ship was silent for a long time after that. The crew looked at the girl not just with respect, but with something deeper, awe. The leader finally realized the truth. She wasn't just a human child. She was something far beyond their understanding, a bridge between life and the universe itself. As she sat down beside her wolf again, exhausted but peaceful, the leader whispered softly, You are not our experiment. You are our miracle. And in that quiet, glowing room with the stars shining outside, the child smiled. Small, tired, but full of light, as if she already knew that her journey with them was only beginning. The days that followed the attack were strange and full of change. The alien ship floated quietly through space, away from danger, surrounded by silence. But inside, everyone was still thinking about what had happened. No one could understand how a small human child had stopped an entire fleet of enemy ships without a single weapon. The story spread through every level of the ship like a secret that everyone whispered about, but no one fully believed. The little girl, however, didn't see herself as a savior. She didn't even realize the full power she had used. She only remembered feeling scared, wanting everyone to be safe, and then the light had come out of her heart like a soft wave. Since that day, she had become even more connected to everything around her. Wherever she walked, the lights grew brighter. The air felt lighter, and even the machines seemed to hum softly as if happy to see her. The aliens, once emotionless and distant, now looked at her with gentle eyes. Some even smiled, an expression that had never existed among their kind before. The albino wolf stayed close as always, its glowing fur reflecting the girl's light. The two were like shadows of one another. One small and fragile, the other large and powerful, yet their bond was unbreakable. The leader of the aliens noticed how the wolf never needed food anymore, how it seemed to live only on the girl's presence. She was feeding it in a way that had nothing to do with food or energy. It was something deeper, a connection between two souls. One morning, the girl woke up and found the leader waiting outside her door. His calm face was softer now, his usual cold expression replaced by curiosity and warmth. Through the translator, he asked if she wanted to see the heart of the ship, the place where all the energy that powered their world came from. The girl nodded eagerly. She wanted to understand this strange home that had become part of her life. They walked through long, shining corridors filled with symbols and moving lights. The wolf followed quietly beside her. As they entered the core chamber, the girl stopped in amazement. In the center of the huge room floated a sphere of pure light, bright and alive, surrounded by gentle waves of color. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. The leader explained in words she only half understood that this was the life core of their ship. It had powered their civilization for thousands of years, but lately, it had started to weaken. When the girl moved closer, the light inside the sphere flickered and grew stronger. The alien standing nearby gasped in surprise. She raised her hand and the light responded, glowing brighter and brighter until the whole room was filled with warmth. It wasn't just energy. It felt like emotion spreading through every wall and every heart present. When she stepped back, the machines around the core started to run perfectly again. The readings showed impossible numbers. The ship's energy was fully restored. The leader looked at her in silence for a long moment, then said softly, "You are connected to life itself." The translator repeated the words in her language. She didn't fully understand, but she smiled and nodded, feeling something peaceful deep inside her. From that day, the aliens began to treat her not as a guest, but as something sacred, a being that carried life's true essence. The crew worked harder than ever, not because of orders, but because they wanted to protect her. The ship became quieter, more peaceful. For the first time in their long history, they began to experience emotions they had forgotten. Kindness, love, and hope. But peace in space never lasts long. Far away, the destroyed enemy fleet had sent out a signal before it vanished. Other alien civilizations began to notice. Some were curious, while others saw the girl as a threat. Rumors spread that the aliens were hiding a new weapon, a living creature capable of controlling the forces of nature itself. And where there are rumors of power, there is always danger. One night, while the girl was sitting near the window watching the stars, the leader came to her again. His expression was heavy with worry. He explained through the translator that they had to go into hiding for a while. He told her that there were others coming, powerful beings who wanted to take her away. She didn't speak, but her eyes showed she understood. The wolf raised its head and growled softly as if it could sense what was coming. The ship changed course and began to travel through darker, emptier parts of the galaxy, places where no signals could reach them. The crew worked silently, knowing that every move mattered. The leader stayed near the girl most of the time now. He had become more protective, almost like a guardian himself. He didn't just see her as a miracle anymore. He saw her as a child who needed safety and care. During the long journey, the girl began to show small changes. The crystal she carried had become a part of her. It glowed softly every time she felt strong emotions. Sometimes, when she laughed, small waves of light rippled across the walls. When she was sad, the lights dimmed, as if the whole ship shared her feelings. The aliens didn't fear it anymore. They accepted it as something natural, a connection between her and the ship that had become her home. But one evening, something unexpected happened again. As the ship drifted near a strange blue planet, the sensors started picking up energy signals that matched the girl's. The aliens were shocked. There shouldn't have been anything like her anywhere in the galaxy. The leader studied the readings and realized something. The energy was coming from the planet below. The girl, too, felt it. She suddenly stood up, staring out the window, her heart beating fast. It was as if something inside her was calling. The wolf looked at her and then at the planet, its ears twitching. The leader saw her reaction and understood immediately. She wanted to go there. At first, he refused. The planet was unknown, possibly dangerous. But as the energy from it grew stronger, the ship's systems began to react. The life core itself started pulsing in rhythm with the planet. It was clear that whatever was down there was connected to her. The leader realized they couldn't ignore it. They prepared a small landing craft, and for the first time since she was taken from Earth, the girl felt the touch of gravity again as they descended. The planet was breathtaking. Its sky shimmered with silver clouds, and the ground glowed faintly under their feet. Strange flowers bloomed everywhere, their petals moving as if alive. The air was warm and full of a gentle humming sound that seemed to come from the ground itself. The moment the girl stepped onto the soil, the light around her grew stronger. The flowers turned toward her, their colors brightening. The aliens recorded everything in shock. The planet was responding to her presence just like the ship did. The leader followed closely, his eyes filled with disbelief. Then they saw it. In the middle of a glowing lake stood a massive crystal, similar to the one the girl carried, but much larger. It pulsed with light, matching her heartbeat. She walked toward it slowly, as if she had always known it was waiting for her. The wolf stayed by her side, silent and alert. When she reached out and touched the crystal, a wave of light spread across the entire planet. The aliens shielded their eyes as the brightness filled the sky. The light was not destructive. It was warm and full of life. The leader felt emotions flooding him. Memories, feelings, voices. It was as if the planet itself was alive and speaking through the light. When the glow faded, everything around them looked new. The plants were greener, the air clearer, and the energy stronger than ever. The leader realized that this planet was a living being, connected to the girl through the same energy that gave her power. It was like she was the child of life itself, a piece of something ancient and infinite. When they returned to the ship, the girl looked out at the planet as they prepared to leave. She didn't cry, but there was a look of calm understanding on her face. She seemed to know that her journey wasn't over yet, that she was part of something much bigger than anyone could imagine. The leader stood beside her, and for the first time, he bowed his head slightly. He didn't do it as a sign of command or authority, but as respect, a silent promise that he would protect her no matter what came next. As the ship drifted away from the glowing planet, the little girl sat beside her wolf, her eyes filled with. The ship moved silently through the stars, carrying the little girl, the albino wolf, and the aliens who had now begun to see her as something far more than human. After leaving the glowing planet, the energy inside the ship became stronger and calmer at the same time. The life core shone brighter than ever, and every part of the ship worked in perfect harmony. The aliens had never experienced such peace. They could feel emotions now, real feelings like joy, care, and even a strange warmth that they couldn't explain. It was as if the girl had awakened something hidden deep inside every one of them. The girl often sat by the glass window, watching the stars outside. She didn't feel lost anymore. The stars didn't seem cold to her now. They felt alive, as if they were whispering stories she could almost understand. The albino wolf would rest beside her, its glowing eyes scanning the empty darkness, always alert, always protective. Even in the endless silence of space, she didn't feel alone. The leader of the aliens often joined her, standing quietly a few steps away. He didn't talk much, but she could sense his thoughts. He had changed deeply since the day he first saw her. He was no longer the emotionless commander he once was. His people had noticed it too. The way he looked at the girl was different. It wasn't curiosity anymore, it was respect mixed with something almost like love. Not the kind humans talk about, but a pure feeling of connection and care. One day, as the ship crossed through a calm stretch of space filled with shimmering dust clouds, the girl felt something strange. The crystal she always carried around her neck began to pulse again, glowing faintly. The leader noticed it and looked at her with concern. The readings from the ship's instruments showed a strange wave of energy ahead, something massive, almost alive. The crew worked quickly, scanning the area. They discovered a mysterious object floating in space, a giant structure shaped like a ring, glowing softly in the darkness. It was old, ancient beyond measure, older even than the stars around it. The leader had never seen anything like it. The girl stared at it, her eyes wide, as if she had seen it before in a dream. The moment she looked at it, the ring began to glow brighter. The aliens were shocked. The structure responded only to her. The leader ordered the ship to stop at a safe distance, but the girl stood up, pressing her hand against the glass. The crystal around her neck was pulsing in rhythm with the ring. She turned toward the leader, her eyes filled with silent meaning. Without words, she was asking to go closer. The leader hesitated. He knew it could be dangerous, but deep down he also knew that this was part of her journey. She had led them through storms, saved them from destruction, and awakened life where there was none. Maybe this was another step in her path. Finally he nodded. A small craft was prepared, and once again the girl, the wolf, and a few aliens descended toward the glowing ring. As they approached, the structure began to hum, sending waves of sound through space. The closer they got, the stronger the humming became. Not frightening, but peaceful, almost like a song. When they entered the ring, a beam of light surrounded them, pulling them gently inside. The next moment, they were no longer in open space. They found themselves standing on a floating platform surrounded by endless light. It was a strange place, and quiet, bright, and full of energy that felt alive. The walls shimmered like liquid glass, and soft colors moved across the sky. The girl looked around, her expression calm but curious. The wolf stayed close to her, while the aliens stood in awe. Suddenly a voice filled the air. Not loud but clear, echoing everywhere at once. It didn't speak in words, but its meaning reached straight into their minds. It said something that made even the leader's heart tremble. The child of light has returned. The girl looked around, trying to understand where the voice came from. Then a shape began to form in the light. A tall, glowing figure, not human, not alien, but something pure and ancient. It looked at the girl gently and said, "You were born from the core of life, sent across the stars to remind worlds what they had forgotten." The leader could feel the truth in those words. The girl wasn't just special, she was created for a reason. The figure told them that long ago, before any of their civilizations existed, there was a balance that connected all living things, the flow of life that kept the universe alive. But over time, species grew proud, focusing only on power, forgetting the meaning of life itself. So the universe had created a spark, a soul in the form of a child, to restore what was lost. The little girl was that spark. The aliens listened in silence, overwhelmed by what they heard. The leader looked at the girl with awe. He had once thought of her as a fragile creature, but now he saw her for what she truly was, a bridge between all life. The glowing figure turned to the girl again and said, "Your journey is not over. The energy inside you will guide others, but you must choose your own path." Then the light began to fade, and slowly the ring's world disappeared. They were back inside their small craft, floating quietly in space again. The leader stared at her, still processing everything. He wanted to ask her so many questions, but he could see she was tired. The wolf laid its head in her lap, and she stroked its fur gently. The ship began its slow return, leaving the glowing ring behind. Back on the main vessel, the crew welcomed them with relief. But there was something different in the air now, a sense of purpose. The girl walked through the halls, her bare feet touching the cold floors, and wherever she stepped, light followed. The leader knew she had changed again. The energy inside her was growing, but so was her awareness. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was beginning to understand. That night, as the ship glided quietly through space, the girl couldn't sleep. She went to the observation deck with the wolf and sat down near the large window. She looked at the stars, remembering the voice from the ring. She didn't know what child of light truly meant, but she could feel that something important was waiting ahead. The leader joined her once more, standing silently beside her. After a long pause, he said, "Do you know why the universe chose you?" The translator repeated his words. She shook her head softly. He looked at her for a moment, then said, "Maybe because you never wanted to harm anyone. Maybe that is what true power is, not in fighting, but in healing." The girl smiled faintly, understanding him even without words. The wolf stretched beside her and looked out at the stars too. There was peace in that quiet moment, but it didn't last long. Suddenly, the ship's alarms rang again, not because of an attack, but because something massive was approaching. A bright light appeared ahead of them, brighter than any star. It wasn't fire or energy, it was pure living light. The leader rushed to the control room, and the screen showed a massive being made of light itself moving toward them. The girl stood up, feeling its presence deep inside her. The wolf growled softly, not in fear but in awareness. The being stopped in front of the ship, filling the view completely. Then, without warning, the light began to shape itself into a familiar form, the same glowing figure they had seen inside the ring. A voice filled the ship again. "The balance is shifting. The darkness grows stronger. She must be ready." The crew froze, unsure what to do. The girl stepped forward, her small hands glowing as if answering the call. She didn't know what was coming, but she felt no fear. The leader looked at her, his expression full of silent pride. He knew now that her presence had changed not just their ship, but their entire way of life. The light outside slowly faded, leaving behind calm darkness once again. The leader turned to his crew and said softly, "We protect her at all costs. She is not just ours. She belongs to every living thing." As the ship continued its journey through the endless stars, the girl sat back down beside her wolf. She looked out at the galaxy, feeling the quiet heartbeat of the universe. Deep down, she understood that her story was far from over. Something was coming. Something that would test everything she had learned. But she also knew one thing for sure. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had her guardian by her side, and somewhere within her small body lived the power to bring light to even the darkest corners of the universe. The stars outside the alien ship glowed like diamonds scattered across a black ocean. The girl sat near the giant window again, her little hands pressed against the glass, staring at the endless sky. The albino wolf sat beside her, calm but watchful. Its white fur shimmered faintly under the soft blue lights of the ship. The crew moved quietly around her. They had all changed since meeting her. They no longer saw her as a weak human child. To them, she was now something sacred. The bridge between worlds, a light that made even their cold metallic hearts feel alive again. But the peace didn't last long. The sensors on the control panel started flashing red. The leader rushed to the front, his glowing eyes narrowing as he saw what was coming. A shadow, a huge dark mask, and was moving through space, swallowing light wherever it passed. The instruments couldn't read it. It wasn't a planet or a ship. It was something far more powerful and alive. The air inside the ship grew heavy. The lights flickered. Even the albino wolf stood up, its fur rising slightly as if it could feel the presence of danger. The girl turned her head slowly toward the darkness. She didn't seem scared, only calm, almost as if she had been expecting this moment. The leader looked at her, then at the growing blackness on the screen. "It's the darkness," he said quietly to his crew. "The one the light warned us about." The words echoed through the silent hall. Everyone knew what that meant. The final test had come. As the shadow got closer, strange whispers began to echo through the ship's corridors. It wasn't sound in the normal sense. It was like thoughts pressing into their minds. The aliens clutched their heads, trying to block it out, but the girl remained still. The wolf stepped in front of her protectively, growling low, its blue eyes glowing brighter. The leader tried to steer the ship away, but the controls stopped responding. The entire vessel trembled as if being pulled by an invisible hand. The dark mass surrounded them, and all light disappeared. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Deep, heavy, endless silence. Then a voice, cold and ancient, filled the ship. "Child of light," it said, "you should not exist." The girl looked around, but there was no body, no face, and only the voice. The leader shouted for power to be restored, but nothing worked. Every system was dead. The aliens looked toward the girl, helpless. She slowly stood up. The albino wolf followed, its fur glowing with faint silver light. The girl's crystal necklace began to shine again, casting a warm glow around her. The voice grew louder. You cannot stop what has begun. The universe belongs to me. The girl took a step forward, and the floor beneath her feet started glowing with soft white light. Each step she took pushed back the darkness a little more. She raised her hand, and the crystal's light expanded, filling the hall. The shadow hissed and pulled back slightly, but it wasn't gone. It grew thicker around the edges of the ship, pressing against the walls. The leader could feel the ship shaking apart. He shouted, "We can't hold this much longer." But the girl didn't look back. Her small face was calm, her eyes bright. She whispered something softly, not in any language the aliens knew, but her words spread through the air like a song. The wolf lifted its head and howled. The sound was deep and powerful, echoing through every corner of the ship. It wasn't a cry of fear, it was a call of strength. The glow from its fur exploded into blinding light, and suddenly the shadow screamed. The aliens fell to their knees, covering their eyes, but the girl stood still in the middle of it all. The light from her necklace spread across her body, wrapping her in a radiant glow. The voice of darkness roared again. "You cannot destroy me. I am everything that hides between the stars." The girl's voice was small but steady. "Then you are part of me too," she said, "and I will bring you light." Her words seemed to shake the air itself. The crystal shone brighter than ever, and from her heart a wave of light burst out, flooding the ship, pushing through the walls and spreading into the vastness of space. The darkness screamed one last time, then it was gone. The stars returned, shining clearer than before. The control panels flickered back to life, and the ship stopped shaking. Silence filled the room again, but this time it was peaceful. The leader slowly stood up, staring at her in disbelief. The crew looked around, tears in their strange glowing eyes. The wolf lay beside her, exhausted but alive, its chest rising and falling slowly. The girl knelt beside it, resting her small hand on its head. The leader approached her carefully. "You did it," he said quietly. "You saved all of us." The girl looked up at him and smiled faintly. "No," she said softly. "The light did." He didn't fully understand what she meant, but her words carried truth. The ship floated silently in the middle of space, surrounded by thousands of stars. Everything looked brighter, cleaner, alive. Even the air inside the ship felt new, as if it had been reborn. After a long time, the leader asked her, "What will you do now?" The girl looked out the window again. "Go home," she said. "But I don't know where that is." The leader thought for a moment. "Maybe home is not a place," he said gently. "Maybe it's where you bring light." She looked at him, her eyes soft and shining. She didn't say anything, but deep inside she knew he was right. Her home wasn't Earth or any planet. Her home was wherever there was darkness that needed to be turned into light. The aliens set a course toward a distant cluster of planets where life still struggled in shadows. They wanted to help rebuild, to share what they had learned from her. The ship became a moving beacon, a symbol of hope across the stars. Everywhere they went, people talked about the small human girl and the white wolf who carried the light of the universe. The girl spent her days helping others understand the warmth she carried. Sometimes she would touch a dying plant and it would bloom again. Sometimes she would comfort a sick alien child, and they would recover faster than anyone thought possible. She didn't think of it as magic. To her, it was just kindness, the kind that healed everything even when words failed. The albino wolf stayed by her side always, never leaving her alone. The leader often watched them from afar, feeling a quiet pride in his heart. He had started this journey believing that power came from control, but she taught him that true power came from compassion. Years passed like that. The girl grew older, though slowly, her light never fading. The aliens had learned to live in peace. They no longer fought for domination. They explored worlds with open hearts, helping life grow instead of taking it. The legend of the Child of Light spread far and wide. But she never saw herself as special, just someone who listened when the universe whispered. One quiet night, the girl stood on the deck again, looking at the stars. The wolf rested beside her, old but strong. The leader came up behind her, his steps soft. "You've changed the galaxy," he said. She smiled. "The galaxy changed itself. I just reminded it how." They stood together in silence, watching the endless space outside. The stars twinkled gently, as if bowing in gratitude. The ship's lights dimmed, matching the calm around them. Finally, the girl whispered, "The light will never end, will it?" The leader looked at her and shook his head softly. "No, because it lives in you." She reached out, touching the glass one last time. The reflection of her glowing crystal shimmered like a tiny sun. The wolf let out a soft sound, almost like a sigh, and as the ship drifted onward through the galaxy, carrying the memories of everything they had been through, one thing became certain. The universe was brighter now. Not because the darkness was gone, but because a small human girl had taught it to shine through anything. Her story became a quiet legend, not of battles or power, but of light, kindness, and the strength of one heart that never gave up. The stars carried her name across the cosmos, reminding every world that no matter how dark it gets, there is always a light waiting to rise.